Hello, I am Shayne Dunbaugh, and I am here to let you know that I am running for office. That's right. May not be, it's not going to be local office either. I'm running for office, and you should give me all your money. You should give it all to me, and just forget about the rest. So, we don't have any money. In fact, we don't like money, and we don't actually want any money, technically speaking. We just want the ability to accomplish the things we want to do. Unfortunately, you're probably already confused, because obviously in this society as we think we know it, we have to have money in order to do anything. So the first priority of this whole campaign and my purpose for existence or whatever is to end the Federal Reserve. So that's number one. Now, this doesn't mean we need to end the federal government. That's not what it means at all. In fact, the federal government, as you currently understand it, is a complete fictitious corporation. It doesn't actually exist. What you think the government is not actually what the government is. So, ending the Federal Reserve System is my primary mission in this whole attempt at engaging at least a little bit in the political process. So, the Federal Reserve, was originally started. A lot of what I'm going to be doing here in the first few segments, though however unprofessional they may seem, we are simply doing what we can to get at least some information out and get things going at least in the right direction. So, the Federal Reserve System was originally started in 1913. That's when the legislation passed. If you go back a couple of years, 6 to around 1907, the Federal Reserve System was originally written up and proposed and submitted to Congress and around the early 1900s. The primary pushers of the Federal Reserve System would be J.P. Morgan, who is now J.P. Morgan Chase, which is the largest financing company in the entire world. And then you have like the Bank of New York, essentially the same thing. Everybody on Wall Street got together. They decided, hey, let's fund the federal government. Let's start lending money to the federal government, because through monopolization with Carnegie Steel and you could throw out any big names from those times, DuPont. So any of the tycoons that existed at that time were the ones who consolidated power after the assassination of Abraham Lincoln in that 30-year period from about 1870 to about 1900. So they consolidated power and were able to consolidate wealth. This is when antitrust legislation came out. Things like protections for the people against major companies who would operate in collusion with one another and to gain power, so that they could control the government, so that they could be the ones that the presidents or the Congress selected to actually lay the foundations for the steals. So it's very, very, there's a concept and a fine line between big business and government, and they go hand in hand oftentimes, because it ended up behooving certain people. It's a corruption. It's definitely a corruption. One thing I want to note, I'll be bouncing around because that's what I do. Because until we can actually get some solid ground, some footing, some idea of where we came from, thus where we're going, then we can, actually hopefully get somewhere. So a little bit about me and my background. I'm married. I have a kid. She's 16 months old, and I'm married to my beautiful wife, Allie. And a little bit about my education background. Yes, I'm a veteran. I served 6 years in the United States Coast Guard, 4 on active duty. Also, I went to, my first school was Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. Graduated from high school in Kansas City, and then went down to school at Tulane. Subsequently, there was a hurricane that came through. I was only there for 1 semester. You can find out all the background in my book, which is around, but I let people read it for free. In fact, I pretty much give everything away for free. I'd like to, at least, because the Federal Reserve System is absolutely no good. You can trace it back to, we're going to talk a lot about money, a lot about currency, things that are wrong with the currency that isn't abstract, it's not far away. You could pick up a dollar bill and I could show you on there. Now, I'm not talking about things like the Illuminati eye or the all-seeing eye. I'm not even talking about how it says, New World Order under it, or the dates, 1776, and how that started the New World Order, and he approves of our undertaking, meaning God. I was at Suffolk University and taking international monetary economics, which is basically monetary exchange. So basically, like triple arbitrage, transferring American dollars into euros and then into pesos and then back to dollars again. Thus money market manipulation. There's a really easy way to make to make some money. We're talking fractions of pennies. Sometimes just sometimes pennies, sometimes a little bit more. But as you build up, there's in Wall Street you have computers making trades, computers betting, and that's supposed to be supply and demand or whatever. But according to their calculations, so you could have right now the amount of trades that are happening by computer systems is uncountable. You couldn't number it besides with a computer. But so those computers are making trades through forex markets all the time. This all comes back to the Bretton Woods Agreement and about 1943-44 or so. And basically what happened was countries got together at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, at Mount Washington Hotel, where I've been, and I've climbed that mountain. And they got together and they decided that the dollar was going to be the backbone of all international trade. And you would have to repay your debts with gold. So they actually fixed the monetary currency, the paper currency, to gold. And so you could only repay your debts for gold at that time. So this was really a way, and it really was a way to consolidate all of the raw materials in the world, all of your commodities. A commodity is anything that comes out of the earth. So, but anyway, I was at Suffolk University, and the professor says, "Oh, well, they're talking about God, on the dollar bill. He approves of our undertaking." And the question is, sure, it's a God, it's God, it says God, but is it the God, capital T? Is it El Shaddai, which is Hebrew for the Almighty? And that's a good question, because anything is a God. Like talking about Freemasonry, Freemasons. You cannot be an atheist, but you can have any God as long as you believe in a higher power. So you have to understand that there's these higher powers, going on. So just because you see the word God doesn't necessarily mean God, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac, the God of Yeshua, also known as Jesus. That may not be who it's pertaining to. So just because the dollar says God, there's a lot of gods. Take some movies, for example. Somebody opens the door and says, "Oh my God," and then the other actor says, "That's right, that's what you can call me." So it doesn't matter. It could be any God. It could be any of the gods. Anyway, so that's just one example. Keep building on it. What do those numbers mean on your dollar bill? The numbers are attached to a Federal Reserve distribution center. Those Federal Reserve distribution centers, there's I think 13 of them throughout the United States. Through calculations, you can easily determine In fact, they do this. They know exactly, dollar for dollar, how much money is out there. It doesn't matter if it's cash or not cash. It doesn't matter if you're paying with your card or you're not. They know how you're spending your money. And when I say they could be anyone. They could be me. Okay, for example, what I'm talking is very important to me, that I went through things like the military, that I went to university, that I went to college, even though that's not necessarily, wasn't necessarily pushed on me, and it wasn't necessarily maybe in my class, right? Because when I'm talking about class, I'm talking blue collar versus white collar. So there's these two ideologies, right? Like, for example, rich dad, poor dad. Okay, rich dad, poor dad. What's the difference between a rich dad and a poor dad? Well, a rich dad will teach you, in the book describes, teaching the child how to make money off of currency, off of compound interest. So instead of a poor kid, is probably learning, in my case, how to clean stables. And then whereas, not that you're a poor kid doing horses these days. Things are very, very dynamic. That's also something important to remember, is things are dynamic. It comes from the root word dunamis, which is Greek, and it means that things are constantly changing. Each situation is not the same, which is where common law breaks down. Common law, huge problem. Okay, common law needs to get out of our country. Not only that, who I am not going to put on a suit because I have to in order to fit in with a certain status quo. I'm not wearing this suit necessarily because that's what other people perceive someone running into politics, things like that, has to do. I'm not that type of a politician, and I'm not that type of a person. For example, Jesus, he said, don't invite rich people who could pay you back, to a party that he's having. That's why I don't invite people with money. That's why I don't invite people who have nice cars, people who have nice things to come and hang out with me. Okay? I like to invite people that can't pay me back. I like to sit down with the guy who's making my burger out back and smoke a cigarette or something else, or a cigar, and talk to him, because I can actually have a real conversation with somebody like that, which I prefer, in my experience, over some, other people maybe schmoozing around martinis and fine wines or something like that. Although I do enjoy fine wines, but just like Jesus, you know what I mean? I'd also rather do it sitting on the ground. I'd rather drink sitting on the ground outside at a park. People talk to me about running for office, and I don't know the first thing about this crap. And first of all, I'm not going to cater to any of that bull crap. I'm not going to do it. Also, there's going to be a lot of vulgarity. There's going to be a lot of mature discussions, because that's where we're at. We're in a dire situation right now with inflation. Inflation is at 300%. We've seen real estate growth. We're completely untethered from any sort of actual backbone. Bond market, the exchange market, the futures market, how it all works, it's all flawed, it's all fucked. Okay, I will tell you that straight up. It's screwed, and we can fix it. The people who can fix it, the people that have the power to fix it, are a bunch of stinking fucking cowards. They will not step out of their professionalism. They will not step out of their political correctness. They won't step out of their position, okay, because they're afraid. They're afraid to let go. They're afraid to let go of the system, to actually do something, to actually stand against it. The people in the position to make change are not going to do it. That's because, most likely, because they've worked to get where they are now, and they're scared that if they change anything, they're going to lose everything. And actually, that's what Jesus is all about. Okay, sell everything you have, he told the rich man. The rich man didn't want to, so he said, get lost. Okay, that's the way it is. It's that make or break it. What is the whole thing about? Bread into more bread, fish into more fish. Okay, if you reread the Bible, it's all about the wealthy staying fed, the poor being oppressed and pushed down, and that's the way it is. With what we have happening in America right now, it's a strategy. It absolutely is a strategy. So additionally to what little bit you know about me so far, I'm 100% pro Torah. Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible, and in that is actually government. For example, if you watch the movie like Super Troopers, okay, Super Troopers, in the first 15 minutes, you know, they have this point where these kids, you know, whatever, the young adults are getting pulled over by the police, and they come up to them, and you know, before they get pulled over though, they're smoking some weed, which is legal in many states, and so they're smoking marijuana, cannabis, and they are talking about the water on beachfront property. And so one of the kids says, you know, hey, who owns the water at beachfront property? And the other guy says, you know, nobody owns that water. That's God's water, okay? And that's exactly the type of concepts we're talking about. If you can sum up pretty much everything I'm gonna say, it's not to minimize it, but it's pretty much that, okay? All the hugest part of economics, the hugest part of imperialism, of government, and how it all works is all about property right definitions. Property right, okay? What you can exclude, right? So it's exclusionary concepts. How do you prevent somebody from getting what someone else has? Okay, and we have very different concepts of this. The American philosophy that goes behind the government, I'm not talking about what has happened in the past. I'm not talking about the oppression of slavery. I'm talking about what some call the American dream. It's not just an American dream. That's what utopia was about. Sir Thomas More, was he American? No, he isn't American at all. He was actually living in Europe. It's a concept of humanity that we all strive for, okay? So we're talking about the philosophy which is American, which is this sort of diversity melding pot, which came about. I think the best person to look to in this concept is Chief Washington. I don't actually know his how to properly say his Indian native. So anyway, like I was saying, this is just gonna jump all over the place. Okay, we're not in a political forum. We're not in, you know, any of these places where people are asking questions and there's a two-way conversation. Honestly, right now, as a country, as a psychology, as a humanity, we're mostly completely lost. Educated people who are informed, or informed people are educated people, they are separated. And that's one thing that we should talk about. And that's how we're going to jump around until hopefully all of this can kind of come together, and hopefully maybe somebody out there wants to actually help do something, you know, other than hacking, you know, something and leaking and all of this. Like, maybe we can actually come together and do what we need to do, which is march on Washington and take our country back. But that's something that's too elusive for most of the people my age and younger. You know, marching on Washington is something that is without power. It's powerless. It has no effect. Okay, how can you even bring together that many people? What are the driving philosophies that underlie a civilian movement like that? What are the philosophies? It's very easy in the 60s. Racism was still a huge problem. Cut and dry. People are blowing each other up. In 1968, there was 10,000 bombings on American soil, but you don't hear about that. And it's the same thing with 9/11. Condoleezza Rice said we could never imagined that people would fly planes into buildings. Well, excuse me. I'm sorry. I know Pearl Harbor happened. I'm sorry planes attacked our country in the greatest attack of our history. Okay, I'm sorry that happened, and that Condoleezza Rice is so stupid, has her head so far stuck up her ass that she forgets about Pearl Harbor. We've been attacked by suicide planes before, okay?
December 7th, 1941, a day of infamy. Even as Japanese diplomats were conferring with Secretary of State Hull on peace measures, Nipponese planes were swooping down on Pearl Harbor.
Washington, D.C. has a no-fly zone. That's why all the buildings can only be like 4 stories, I think. You have to go outside to Alexandria in order to actually have skyscrapers. And talk about crime. Talk about a crime-ridden city. Talk about a shithole, okay? The only thing that's even semi-okay about that place is at least there's a little bit of prettiness to things. That at least somebody's out there trying. But we're all jacked up. Lots of problems. One big problem, too, is like, take low-income housing or income restriction housing, right? So you have income restriction housing, and yet you have all these military men who are living in income restricted housing, okay? It's public information how much money a military member makes, enlisted, officer. You can find that out. 1, okay, BAH, called Basic Allowance for Housing, all right, in this area that I'm standing in, $1,300, okay, just for that. Then, let's say you're E3, E4, all right, minimum salary per month, about 22 and up. Throw on the 13, it's about 3,500. It's untaxed. BAH is untaxed. It's not recorded. So when somebody goes to apply for income restricted housing, that's a military member, they can get right in because that BAH is not included in the income. So they're only going off the 2,200. That's a loophole in the system. You could go either way there. You could say, on one hand, wow, you have an intelligent military member who's taking advantage of the way the system works, and he's profiting. Yeah, he's gonna make some money off of this deal. He's gonna be able to save it, and we can keep going. And we can say, hey, this person, they deploy all this and that. But the reality is, Americans are all the military. The general of Japan didn't invade this country because he said there would be a gun behind every blade of grass, because the people would come up in arms like that. That used to be true probably, but not anymore. Now, so many problems. And so anyway, then you could take it on the flip side and you could say, hey, isn't this a respectable military man? You know, maybe he should be leaving those apartments open for a single father or single mother who maybe have a tough situation going on, and actually using the low income restricted housing for what it's worth, instead of seeing a bunch of brand new vehicles all around all the time. And there's a real break between the two groups here. You know, you have 50% military, 50% people who are struggling. You have people working on their cars in the parking lot. Meanwhile, you have other people pulling up in brand new $35,000 vehicles. Does the military man, is that honor? Is that what honor is? Is it honorable to say, no, I will not take the low income housing because somebody else in the community could need it, and instead I'm going to step up to the plate, or however you want to phrase it, and actually pay for something else? There's problems in the markets as well, huge problems. Inflation, there's no grounding. The bottom line is, people, these concepts, I talk about concepts all the time, but at the end of the day, the bottom line is there's so many problems that until we can get somebody in Congress that actually has the skill set to report back to the public, to actually not even leak the information, just we want the information, we want the stats, okay, we want the technical details, so that way we can see spending exceeds GDP. We can easily see. These are basic concepts. What is the problem here? So, first one we're going to take out, Marco Rubio. What an idiot, okay? First of all, I guess he's not exactly an idiot, but let's look at Marco Rubio, okay? And let's look at the public population at large. They are the idiots, truly. Okay, so you have Marco Rubio, a junior senator. Rubio is a senator in his first term. I heard him speak the first time, probably when all of you did, and when he had already been elected to Senate. And he sounded okay, right? He sounded kind of fresh. He was young. Within 2-3 years, he has gone from young, fresh, to a complete sellout. The guy might as well just retire and become a lobbyist because, one, he's going to make more money, and that's what he really wants. So he went from, somewhat of a modest kind of approach to now the guy's wearing $11,000 suits, just like all the schmucks. I got this buy one get one free, you know it, because I got to keep up the freshness, the appearance for all y'all shallow people out there. And then the other one is now he's wearing diamonds. He's got diamonds. He's got Armani suits or whoever, and he's a complete sellout. The guy's not didn't have a bone in his spine. So the American population then fall for this sort of stupidity, let all these people rip each other apart, and then what? We're down to pretty much Trump and Hillary, and we'll take out the other minor candidates pretty quickly. So funny story, right? Did you know that within the first 2 episodes of season 1 of The Office, that they actually, within 5 minutes, in 2008 is when The Office came out, within 5 minutes, they actually 7 minutes, they actually completely diss Hillary Clinton, right? They call her Godzilla-ry, they call her a couple other things in there. It's like Michael, the guy, the boss, it's like his first one-on-one, how they do in The Office. They invented this weird, dry humor where they just talk to the camera. It's really, really odd, actually. And so, but, I liked it a little bit. So anyway, first they diss Hillary, and then they go on and they diss Trump in episode 2. Okay, so I happen to be of the mindset that they already have the candidates picked and all of this, because there's actual government documents that have been released on psychological operations, on manipulating the news, on using the different regional media outlets, giving them certain points. So, like, for example, if they want Hillary to win, they'll pump up Cruz on the media, and then Trump. So they split the votes, right? And so how they do that is by manipulating the media. They pull the strings. We know this. Most of you people out there, you know this. You just don't know how to get a grasp on it. And I have worked very hard to get a grasp on it. I don't exactly know how it happened. I think it's always been kind of like something I wanted to do is to become the president. Not exactly sure when it happened. Maybe I was about 16. And I was kind of hearing, like, on the radio and stuff, like, everybody, having all these problems. And I began to think to myself, I don't have any of those problems that these people have. And why are these people having problems? And then so then I decide, well, I fix my problems all the time, and so maybe I could fix other people's problems. Maybe I could do something like that, for other people. And it's something I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about debating people. I'm passionate about, making people look wrong, and I get really upset when I'm wrong. And then when I was 18, it kind of all came together. You really have to read my book to really kind of understand, more about my upbringing. But my grandfather was a U.S. retired military colonel. He flew in Vietnam. It's a bit of a legend. But so I was raised by all military officers, and then I too went in the military. And once I got in the military, and I had to go in because I believed that there was corruption. You may have seen out there like a sort of pyramid structure where you have like these people who are the slaves or something, the workers at the bottom, and you have like the police, and then you have like the military, and then you have like, Donald Trump, and then you have like, you know. And so, so then, I'm not the type of person who was going to go through all that crap, you know, to just, you know, like a Marco Rubio. I wasn't somebody who was gonna, you know, say, well, they say that, you know, these people are all controlling, and it's this pyramid structure. You know, that's why I also went to university. I had to know what was really going on in all of these places before I could come here, stand in front of this cell phone, and write on my cardboard, because I wanted to do like whiteboard paint, you know, but you know, we don't have it. We can't afford it. That's out of our budget. So just happen to have a piece of poster board around, and just happen to have this nice permanent marker, which is a necessity. So before I came before you guys and told you, you know, hey, I think I can do this. You know, I had to work really hard, and so I went in the military, and I found out the truth. And the truth is, it is a pyramid structure. Congratulations. But I couldn't just say it was without actually going through it, because then every Tom, Dick, and Harry, which are out there, they're such jerks, and they say, you know, oh, well, how would you know? You haven't been there, you know. And now I can say, hey, you know, fuck you, I have. And same with why I worked so hard to get into upper level universities. My school, when I graduated, they didn't even want to graduate me. They didn't want to graduate me for the same reasons of the Kissinger Report. Kissinger Report, NSSM 200, National Studies and Securities Memorandum 200, is all about manipulating foreign countries so that way America can stay the superpower that they think that it should be, and they think that... So we're really talking about two different mindsets, okay? It's two different mindsets. So, for example, have you ever played one of those brain games where you're like trying to take apart these two metal items, and they're one's in each other, and you think looking at it, any person thinks looking at it, this is impossible, you can't fit out. And then so you have the two different types of people, right? You have the people who fail and the people who actually solve the puzzle. People who fail do things like muscle, you know, they're trying to like pull it apart, they're trying to use strength and brute force. And then you have someone who's more technically inclined, who will kind of, you know, look at it, manipulate it, and gently. And those are the people who are usually successful. Whereas the people who try to brute force it, same thing. Have you seen the movie Armageddon? Of course you have. Who hasn't? It's a great movie. So then in Armageddon, they're trying to blow up the asteroid to save the Earth, right? And so the guy says to him, you know, he's supposedly went to MIT. And so he says to him, you know, if you blow up a firecracker with your hand open, right, it just blows up and it barely burns your hand. Then, if you put a firecracker in your hand and you squeeze down on it as tight as you can, you're going to blow off like a finger or two. So that's the same thing with this government that we're talking about. My government that I'm talking about, right, is like this one, right? Their government is like clench the fist, white the knuckles, hang on for dear life, because we're all gonna die, right? That's what they're doing. That's their idea. If it doesn't work, it's because you need more men, you need more troops, you need more shields, you need more tanks, you need more armored vehicles against civilians. In my concept, and right, in calculus and in science, right, Einstein wrote, if you explore science for long enough, you will come to the realization that there is a greater power within them. I don't know if you want to trust a Jew or a man who you know, basically came up with many of the theorems that were required for the separating atoms and atomic nuclear chain reaction. And so there's a lot to talk about. Big factors. Big factors is, like I was saying, I think there's 13 Federal Reserves. They just distribute the money, then the money comes back, they burn it or get rid of it, and then they reproduce the money. Those numbers on there is actually tracking the numbers. They know where your money comes from. You're like, oh, okay, I got my money e-deposited. Okay, so then I go to the bank. They know how much you're going to spend on drugs. Okay? Trust me. That's why I was paying $35,000 a year. Okay? Private schools and public schools, night and day. Okay? Private schools, Harvard, you heard about it. They got in trouble for making sure that their kids got straight A's so they could say that their kids had a higher GPA. Okay? Then you have public schools. Public schools are trying to flunk you. Public schools are not trying to make you look good like Harvard is. And it's not just Harvard, it's Tulane, it's any private school you go to. Okay? There is a system here, people, that is completely messed up. And until you realize that, no matter what, if you use your eyes, you have a problem. If you use your eyes and you're looking around for problems with what you can see, you won't see it. You will legitimize it. You will say, oh, this is the way it has to be. This is the way that it is. This is what has to be. And you're dead wrong. Okay? You are dead wrong. Especially when you go as high up in academia as I did, as hard as I worked to get there. Because I didn't have the grades that I should have had in high school. I went from one school where I was in a high income area from getting straight A's and B's, high B's, to being flunked, going in the same semester, transferring schools in the same semester. People were willing to flunk me, to fail me, right? Even though I transferred in with an A. And if I hadn't argued with that teacher, they would have given me the A. So the thing is, it's just like this. You have a teacher, right? He says, you know, this is really the difference, a big part of the difference between the Midwest and the Northeast, right? So you have a teacher. The kid comes home with his report card to his parents. He's getting 5 A's. 5 A's and 1 C-. Okay? In New England, in the Northeast, and in where people have logic and objectivism, okay, where people are not retarded, okay? For when I mean retarded, I mean it. For example, in New York City, in Boston, in Chicago, maybe not Chicago, I don't care about Chicago so much. In Boston, though, you don't have red and yellow and green lights to merge onto a highway. An on-ramp is called an on-ramp so you can accelerate to speed. Not so you go down there and sit and wait until something tells you to go on the highway and you're actually willing to obey this stupid of a law. People are getting ticketed because of a red and green light. Let me tell you something, people. In places like Texas, Houston, big city, that's the third most populated city in the whole nation, and they have these giant highways filled with traffic. People can't merge because they don't know how to anymore because they've been stupefied. You go to a place like New England, I was there, okay? We heard a lecture from the state troopers, a very good reputation. So we had one of them coming in, and so they come in and they say, hey, in most states, there's a car accident, right? You have a car accident intersection. In Massachusetts, it's different because they have different categories. There can be like 3 of them. 1, driver fault. 2, other driver fault. 3, engineering. Okay? So they write off the tickets and they do their police reports by what caused the car accident. So many engineering accidents in the same intersection, it doesn't mean you change how people drive. It means you change the intersection. It's very simple, okay? You don't tighten your grip around the firework to prevent the firework from exploding. No, you need to relax your grip and let it go off and slightly burn them, okay? That's minimizing damage. So in places like the Midwest, you get caught in a speeding trap. Okay, that's another thing about Massachusetts. You don't really get speeding tickets. Also, you don't really see very many car accidents on the highway. Okay, it's a big part of that has to do with like the moon, right? So the moon, you've seen it. Everybody wants to know, why is the moon red? You know, it's just rising. Why is it so big, but at night it's small up in the sky? It's the same night, but here it looks huge. So the thing with that is, because you're looking at a tree or something, or a house, the rooftop of a house, the moon looks actually bigger because it's your depth perception, right? It's like those funny tricks where if you stare at a red dot and then look away, you see the red dot, you know, from elementary school. Same type of concept. It's just a trick of the mind, right? Same thing when it comes to the problems that we're experiencing on the highway. Another fact, Wyoming has more car accidents than any other state. Wyoming is the least populated state in this country. Why do they have the most car accidents? Because it's the least populated state in the country. Places like New York, Boston, people, they don't have a problem being neck and neck to each other doing 65. Here, people get scared to death to even get on the highway because they've completely ceded the power until they're not even humans anymore, right? They're just waiting to die. And if you're waiting to die, you're already dead. And those people, that's why nothing's happening in this country, because everybody's dead. They're lulled into complacency. They're stupid. They're stupid, doped up, and dumb. And that's repeating it because that's how bad it is. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. We're gonna keep going. I mean, just like let's talk about something else real quick. Just hot button issues. We hit Rubio, and so let's talk about Sanders for a second, right? Sanders promising free education. That's great. France, they have free education system too. Hey, even better, Cuba. Why not Cuba? Let's talk about Cuba. So Cuba, right? In Cuba, it's still a communist country. It's 100% socialism. Okay, so the way that it works is each student is forced into a higher education system. Their schools are better than ours because they put pressure on the kids to actually rise up and go above. They go to excellent schools. Their universities are very, very good because that's where they're putting all of their effort. That's where they're pushing themselves. So what happens is you have somebody who's like 22 and they're already, you know, done with their doctor, you know, their PhD, we're really talking about dentists. They're talking about application. So you have like a dentist somebody who accelerated, and then you have just like a normal person or whatever, you know, whatever. You guys know what I'm saying, right? So then what happens is we had all these Cubans that would try to migrate to this country, right? You're not an immigrant until you actually can get inside the country. Until then, you're just a migrant. And you can be an illegal migrant or you can be a legal migrant, but you're not an immigrant until you actually immigrate. And so these people coming into the countries now, they're not immigrants, they're migrants. And so anyway, it's not a wasted. Nothing is wasted when it comes to talking some of these subjects that we're talking about. So they used to come to the United States because they were really good dentists. And then they were only getting the equal share because it's communism, right? So they would only have the same thing as their neighbor. They would all have the same thing. So if they wanted to have, a lot of people at this point say more wealth. They want to have more wealth. They want to be richer or whatever. That isn't necessarily true. It's actually more freedom, and freedom does not translate to wealth. In fact, that's really restrictive. So they would migrate here to actually just even be happier. So maybe they could have like their own, you know, personality. Really, you know, they could have what items they want in their house. They could have what clothes they want, and that doesn't necessarily mean we're talking about people who want money. We're not talking about that. It's like this stupid guy who made that video about Coney where he's shocked that people in Africa want to kill themselves. You know, the kid says I would be better off dead. You know, and that doesn't have anything to do with the fact that that's true or not true. What it does have to do with the fact is this guy doesn't realize that that's happening right here in this country. Okay, just because you live in an overall poor country or something like that, or you have a certain mindset of the way things are supposed to be, doesn't mean that there isn't a dark underbelly. So these people, they would come here by the droves, and then we have this something called the Feet Dry Act. The Feet Dry Act is if a Cuban with a degree gets to America, gets into the sand from, by the way, Cuba is only like 110 miles or so from Florida, and anyway, if they get to America, get to the beach, and their feet are dry, so they don't come up through the ocean or whatever, then they're eligible to potentially go into this Feet Dry Act. So the Feet Dry Act starts at $5,000. It can go anywhere up to $250,000 or so, and that's a grant for immigrating to this country. So the standard is not that these people are better educated, or just because this person's educated. This person did not have a choice to become a doctor. This person did not have a choice to go into college. They did not have a choice to be a high achiever. It's like with getting into colleges. If your parents went there and they're an alumni or alumnus, then you will have easier entry into it. Okay, so it's not about merit. Meritorious achievement is what it's called, where all of these factors. We think the best student should go to the school with the best reputation. Once you get through it all, once we all get through it all, and the truth is out there for all of you, then we will be able to get through these issues. We will be able to work through them and talk about them. But as we continue to go along the state-run media, the state-sponsored narrative, this state, for example, did you know Jill Stein is an actual legitimate candidate for presidency right now? Jill Stein, you haven't heard of her. That's because they kicked her off the debates. She's at the debates on stage at a couple of months ago when the debates first started on the public realm, where it was on whatever the big major channels are and all that stuff. They kicked her off. They didn't let her come on the set. And it shouldn't be called a set either. It should be called a debate. Whatever, something they call about debate, which I don't know. And so then anyway. These people didn't have a choice to go to college. So we're looking at this Muslim or this Cuban or this Indian, they have these degrees and they have a master's, whereas our American kids are just a bunch of shitbags, which is not fucking true. Because I told you to begin with, my teachers were willing to flunk me when I went down to a different school, okay? Lower income education. The system is rigged, people. It is time to wake up. It is time to wake up, and that doesn't mean open your eyes. That means you have to make a decision within yourself, within your heart, that you can stand on your own 2 feet and you can actually commit to what you believe, what you think, and then it becomes what you know. And that's what it's about. And we're not talking about something fake. We're talking about truth. We're talking about believing in something, believing in truth. And we're not going to let ourselves get thrown into this pre-planted thought process that the government has put there. It's a fact. What comes into you goes out your mouth. It is what you think. Jesus said that. So these people, they've planted certain ideas where if you see me get excited, if you see me clap my hands or put my hand down on the podium or raise my finger up in the air, you think Hitler. You think charismatic. This person is too charismatic. We don't want to go overboard with this extremist. Which, by the way, in my generation, extreme is a good thing. Extreme sports. We were all about extreme sports. It wasn't until the psychological operation of 9/11 kicked off that everything got completely destroyed. And let's talk about it, all right? It's not a conspiracy, it's a fact, okay? We lost more large companies as a result of that era than at any other time. Independent music records, they were dissenters. You can't have dissent with the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act is unconstitutional. Read Howard Zinn. Yes, I am the real deal, and I'm here to continue to do this. I'm going to continue to do this. I don't have anything. We don't have anything, but we have enough. We have more than many other people, and we're in a good position to actually be able to potentially change the conversation a bit. So, anyway, I'm Shayne Dunbaugh. Probably didn't wrap up any of my thoughts, but it's me.
Yeah.